I'm Cameron, I'm 37, and my own brother, the town's chief of police, arrested me for impersonating a federal officer in the middle of my grandmother's Sunday dinner. Before I tell you about the moment his entire world came crashing down when my commanding officer walked in, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. The fork in my hand froze halfway to my mouth. The clatter of my mother's knife against her plate was the only sound in the room. Outside, the quiet streets of Chesterville, Virginia, were dark, but inside my grandmother's dining room, the light was blindingly bright, illuminating the triumphant sneer on my brother's face. "You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer," Alex announced, his voice booming with an authority he'd always craved. He puffed out his chest, his police chief uniform stretched tight. Every eye at the table was on me. My mother, Eleanor, her face a mask of profound disappointment. My cousins, their expressions a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. My uncle nodding slowly as if this confirmed every bad thing he'd ever thought about me. Only my grandmother, Evelyn, at the far end of the table, met my gaze. There was no surprise in her eyes, only a deep, weary sadness. Alex took a deliberate step forward, pulling a pair of shiny silver handcuffs from his belt. "I have evidence," he declared, gesturing to a thick manila folder on the table. "That you have been living a lie that ends tonight." He thought he had me. He thought he'd finally cornered the black sheep of the family, the brother who had left this small town behind while he stayed to become its king. He saw the official-looking military ID hanging from a lanyard around my neck and believed it was a prop in a pathetic charade. He saw my silence not as control, but as guilt. The metallic click of the first cuff locking around my wrist echoed in the silent room. The cold steel felt like a brand. I didn't resist. I didn't argue. I just kept my eyes on him, letting him have his moment. He grabbed my other arm, yanking it behind my back with more force than necessary. Another click. It was done. I was officially a prisoner in my own family's home, accused by my own blood. He thought he had won. He had no idea he had just triggered an alarm that would bring a force down on this quiet little house that he couldn't possibly comprehend. He had no idea who I really was. But to understand how we got to that disastrous dinner, how a family could fracture so completely, we have to go back. Not just a few weeks, but 7 long years, and a lifetime of resentments before that. 7 years. That's how long it had been since I'd last set foot in Chesterville. My life was a world away, a life of structure, discipline, and secrets lived out within the secure confines of the Office of Strategic Defense and Intelligence, or OSDI. My days were spent in classified briefings and strategic planning sessions, a reality so far removed from my hometown that it might as well have been on another planet. Communication with my family was minimal, a birthday card here, a stilted holiday phone call there. It was a distance I had carefully, necessarily cultivated. Then the letter arrived. It wasn't in an email or a text. It was a physical letter, written in my mother Eleanor's looping, dramatic cursive on pale blue stationery. It found its way through layers of secure mail processing to land on my desk, feeling like an artifact from another life. The letter was a masterpiece of passive aggression. It spoke of how much the family missed me, how Alex was doing such wonderful things as the new chief of police, a promotion he had earned through sheer hard work. It mentioned how my grandmother was getting older and how she'd love to see me. The final line was the hook. "We're having a family dinner at your grandmother's this Sunday, 6 p.m. It's been too long, Cameron. It's time to come home." Reading it, I didn't feel warmth. I felt the familiar pull of guilt, a tool my mother wielded with surgical precision. Coming home wasn't about a happy reunion. It was about reasserting the family hierarchy, with Alex at the top and me in my designated place, the disappointing absent son. I leaned back in my chair, the letter resting on my chest. My mind, trained to analyze threats and predict outcomes, started running scenarios. The best-case scenario was an evening of awkward questions and thinly veiled insults. The worst-case scenario, I wasn't sure, but my gut told me this was more than just a dinner. Felt like a summons. My mind immediately flashed back to the last time I was home, our father's funeral. I had flown in on a 24-hour leave, my uniform pressed, my grief a quiet, heavy weight in my chest. But at the service, it was Alex's grief that took center stage. He was the one who had stayed, the one who had been there at the end. He stood beside my mother, her rock, while I was treated like a distant relative. People I'd known my whole life shook my hand and said, "It's good of you to make it," as if I'd come from down the street instead of halfway across the world. After the burial, there was a gathering at the house. My mother pulled me aside, her voice a sharp whisper. "Your father left the house to me, of course. His pension is taken care of. He didn't have much of an inheritance to speak of, but he always said his legacy was his son's." Then she looked at Alex, who was holding court in the living room, and back at me. "At least one of you understood what that meant." The implication was clear. I had abandoned my post. My career, which I couldn't speak about, was seen as a selfish escape. That day, I realized I didn't have a place here anymore. So I left the next morning before anyone woke up, and I hadn't been back since. So why go back now? Part of me, the logical, analytical part, said to burn the letter and forget it. But another part, a deeper, more stubborn part, felt a pull. It wasn't about seeking their approval anymore. I had long since given up on that. It was about facing them as the man I had become, not the boy they remembered. It was about closing a chapter. I logged into my terminal and formally requested a 48-hour leave of absence. My commanding officer, General Delaney, approved it within minutes with a simple message: "Family matters. Stay safe, Caldwell. Call if you need anything." I had no idea how prophetic those words would be. The drive to Chesterville was like traveling through the pages of my own history. The highways widened, then narrowed, the landscape shifting from urban sprawl to rolling green hills dotted with old farmhouses. With every mile, the weight of the present lifted, replaced by the heavier, denser weight of the past. I remembered another drive 20 years ago. I was 17, sitting in the passenger seat of my dad's old Ford pickup. We were on our way back from a college visit, a state university 2 hours away. I was buzzing with excitement, talking about their engineering program. Alex, who was already at the local community college with plans to join the police academy, had refused to come. My dad listened patiently, a small smile on his face. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Cam," he'd said. "You see the big picture. Alex, he's different. He's a rock. He's this town. He needs to be needed. You need to fly." Later that week, the fight happened. My parents were at the kitchen table talking about money. I heard my mother's voice, sharp and worried. "We can't afford it, Richard. Not with Alex's tuition and the mortgage. The college fund we set aside won't cover a state university for Cameron. Eleanor, the boy has a scholarship offer," my dad had argued. "It's not a full ride, but it's a start. We can make it work. He's earned this." "And what about Alex?" she shot back. "He's staying here to be close to us, to look after us. Cameron gets to just leave? It's not fair. The one who stays should get the support." I had stood in the hallway, my heart sinking. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. In my mother's eyes, my ambition was a betrayal, and Alex's lack of it was a virtue. I ended up enlisting in the army a few months later. It was a way out, a way to pay for my own future without being a burden, a way to fly without having to ask for permission. My mother had cried, not because she was scared for me, but because she saw it as another rejection of the life she thought I should live. Now, turning onto that final stretch of Route 29, the old welcome sign, "Chesterville, a good place to call home," seemed to mock me. It was a good place to call home if you fit the mold. I never did. As I drove down Main Street, I saw it. Parked in the reserved spot in front of the town hall was a brand new police cruiser, gleaming black and white under the afternoon sun. Emblazoned on the driver's side door in bold, gold letters were the words, "Chief of Police Alex Caldwell." It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a throne, a mobile symbol of his authority, his dominance over this small patch of the world. I could almost picture him behind the wheel, cruising slowly down the street, dispensing nods and waves like a benevolent king. He had achieved everything he ever wanted. He was the big man in a small town. He had the power, the respect, the title. He was his mother's son, the one who stayed, the one who mattered. I parked my nondescript sedan a few houses down from my grandmother's place. I needed a moment to armor myself, to put on the version of Cameron Caldwell that could survive this. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and impending rain. It was the smell of a past I could visit, but never return to. Before I could even raise my hand to knock on my grandmother's door, it swung open. Evelyn stood there, her small frame radiating a nervous energy. She pulled me into a fierce hug, her grip surprisingly strong for an 80-year-old. As she held me, she whispered into my ear, her voice so low it was barely a breath. "I'm so glad you came, Cameron, but be careful. Your brother, he's been planning this. He thinks he's found something. Don't let him get to you." She pulled back, her face arranging itself into a welcoming smile for the benefit of anyone watching. Come in, come in. Everyone's been waiting for you." The warmth of the house hit me, the smell of roasted chicken and apple pie. It was the scent of a home that was no longer mine. The living room was crowded, a sea of familiar faces that now felt foreign. My mother, Eleanor, was the first to see me. Her smile was brittle, a social obligation. "Cameron, you made it. We were beginning to think you'd forgotten about us." "Hello, Mom," I said, my voice neutral. Then I saw him. Alex rose from the armchair at the head of the room, our father's chair. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe he just carried himself that way now. His handshake was firm, a display of strength, his eyes holding a predatory gleam. "Little brother," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Decided to grace us with your presence, huh?" "Something like that," I replied, pulling my hand away. The introductions were a blur. My Uncle Robert, a man who had always hitched his wagon to Alex's star, gave me a curt nod. "Still playing soldier?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. My cousin Maya, who was always kind to me as a kid, offered a shy, hesitant smile, but quickly looked away when she saw my mother watching. The message was clear. I was on my own. Dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The seating arrangement was a power play. Alex sat at the head of the table, the seat of the patriarch. My mother sat to his right. My grandmother was at the opposite end, and I was placed halfway down, an outsider at the main table. The conversation was a constant, flowing river of praise for Alex. "Alex, tell Cameron about the new equipment you got for the department," my mother prompted. "Tell him about that charity drive you organized, son," Uncle Robert chimed in. Alex soaked it all in, recounting his accomplishments with false modesty. He was the town's protector, its favorite son. Through it all, I remained quiet, eating my meal, offering non-committal hums and nods. I was a blank wall, giving his provocations nothing to stick to. This, I knew, was infuriating him more than any argument could. He wanted a reaction. He wanted me to get defensive, to argue, to show weakness. I was determined not to give him the satisfaction. Finally, Maya turned to me. "It must be interesting what you do, Cameron," she said, her voice quiet. "Traveling and everything." Before I could answer, my mother cut in. "Oh, Maya, don't bother asking. He won't tell you anything. It's all a big secret. Not like Alex, who shares everything with his family." The silence that followed was heavy. My grandmother shot my mother a look of pure fury from across the table, but the damage was done. The lines had been drawn. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a tribunal, and I was the one on trial. Through the shears of the dining room window, I caught it. A flicker of movement in the shadows across the street. A silhouette detaching itself from the dark trunk of an old oak tree. It was subtle, easily missed by an untrained eye, but my eyes were trained. For over a decade, my life had depended on noticing things that weren't quite right. This wasn't right. "Excuse me," I said, pushing my chair back. "I think I'll get some fresh air." My mother frowned. "Cameron, we're in the middle of dinner. Don't be rude." "Just for a moment," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I needed to confirm my suspicions. Outside, The evening air was cool and damp. I walked down the porch steps and onto the lawn, feigning a stretch to relieve a cramp from the long drive. Casually, I let my gaze sweep the street. There, a dark sedan I didn't recognize was parked 2 houses down, its engine off, its windows tinted, and another figure was positioned near the corner, partially hidden by a hedge. 2 of them. They weren't trying to be invisible, just inconspicuous. To a civilian, they'd look like neighbors out for a walk. To me, they looked like a perimeter. This was a setup. Coordinated, planned event. My brother hadn't just invited me to dinner for a family argument. He was staging an operation. A cold knot formed in my stomach, but it wasn't fear. It was a chilling clarity. He was using his official resources for a personal vendetta. He had crossed a line, a very dangerous one. I went back inside, my face a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. As I sat down, my mother fixed me with a look of stern disapproval. "You're always so secretive, Cameron," she said, her voice carrying across the table. "You disappear for years. We barely hear from you. Your brother is an open book. He serves this town, he shares his life with us. What is it that you do that's so important you can't even tell your own family?" "It's complicated, Mom," I said quietly, my mind racing. I was no longer just dealing with family drama. This was now a tactical situation. "It's complicated," Alex mimicked, a cruel, booming laugh in his voice. "That's the answer for everything, isn't it? For missing birthdays, for missing Dad's final weeks, for missing everything that matters." "That's enough, Alex." My grandmother's voice cut in, sharp and clear from the end of the table, but Alex waved a dismissive hand. "No, it's not enough. For years, we've all just accepted it. Cameron's mysterious job, his important life with his big salary. We've all just played along." He pushed his chair back and stood up, his 6'2" frame casting a long shadow across the table. He picked up a wine glass and tapped it with a spoon. The ringing sound silenced all other conversation. "Actually," he said, his eyes locking onto mine, a predatory gleam in them, "I think it's high time we all found out exactly what my little brother has been up to, because I've been doing some digging. And what I found, well, it's quite a story." He had his audience now. He was the prosecutor, the judge, and the jury, and I was the man in the dock. Alex reached down and picked up the thick manila folder I'd noticed earlier. He slapped it down on the center of the table with a loud thud that made everyone jump. The sound was theatrical, rehearsed. "For the past several weeks," he began, pacing behind his chair like a lawyer delivering his closing argument, "I've had my doubts. My brother, the military man, the one doing secret things for the government. It all sounded very impressive, but there were no details. No promotions we could celebrate, no stories he could share. Just a vague, important-sounding job title that let him stay away from us. He let that hang in the air, planting the seed of resentment. He was framing my service as an arrogant rejection of them. So I did what any concerned citizen and brother would do. I hired a private investigator." A collective gasp went through the room. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Hiring a PI to investigate your own brother was a shocking escalation, a move that burned the last bridge of trust. But Alex was proud of it. "A good one, too," he continued, tapping the folder. "A guy named Markham. I sent him to the city where Cameron lives, and what he found is all right here." He opened the folder and began pulling out glossy photographs, tossing them onto the table like playing cards. They were surveillance photos. Me going into my apartment building. Me meeting with a colleague in a park. Then, more damningly, photos of equipment boxes being delivered to my address, some with government markings. "These boxes," Alex said, pointing a thick finger at one of the photos, "contain restricted government property. We're talking high-tech electronics, communications gear. Things a legitimate officer would have on a secure base, not in a civilian apartment." He then pulled out a sheaf of papers. "And this is the real kicker. My investigator managed to get copies of documents from inside Cameron's apartment. Financial records, encrypted communications logs, mission briefings." He held one up, Most of it was redacted with thick black lines, but the header was clear. OSDI. Classified. I ran his service record through some back channels. Alex lied, his voice dripping with false authority. And guess what? The military has no record of a Captain Cameron Caldwell assigned to any high-level intelligence unit. They have a record of his basic service, sure, but then it all just goes dark. Almost like someone created a fake identity. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table, his face a mask of righteous fury. You see, my brother isn't a secret agent. He's a fraud. He's been using a low-level military background to acquire government property, probably selling it on the black market. He's been living a lie, funded by stolen valor and deceit. He finally looked at me, a triumphant, pitying smile on his face. It's over, Cameron. The games, the secrets. I know what you are. The room was silent, stunned. My family, who had known me my whole life, were now looking at me as if I were a dangerous stranger. They didn't see the logical fallacies, the impossible leaps in his story. They just saw the confident police chief and his folder full of evidence. And they believed him. The air in the room was thick with accusation. No one defended me. No one even questioned Alex's wild narrative. They accepted his version of reality because it was easier. It made sense of the brother and son who had always been distant, who had chosen a life they couldn't understand. So, Alex said, his voice dropping to a somber, official tone. As the chief law enforcement officer of this county, it is my duty to act. He started walking around the table toward me. Each footstep was heavy, deliberate. My cousin, sitting next to me, instinctively shrank away, pulling his chair back as if my alleged criminality were contagious. Cameron Caldwell, Alex declared, intentionally using my full name as if reading from an indictment. I am placing you under arrest for the impersonation of a federal officer and theft of government property. He was behind me now. I felt the heat radiating off his body, the scent of his self-satisfaction. He grabbed my left arm. I didn't resist. I let him pull it back, my muscles loose. Do you have anything to say for yourself? He asked, his voice a low growl near my ear. I turned my head slightly, my eyes meeting his. I kept my voice quiet, devoid of emotion. Are you sure you have the authority for this, Alex? The question caught him off guard. It wasn't a plea or a denial. It was a procedural question. These are federal crimes, he scoffed, recovering quickly, committed by a resident of my town. I have every authority. That's not how jurisdiction works for these statutes, I said calmly. This would fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The investigation would be handled by the Judge Advocate General's Corps, not a local PD. You're out of your lane, Chief. For a split second, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. I had introduced a detail he hadn't prepared for. A piece of a world he didn't understand, but his ego quickly snuffed it out. Don't try to lecture me on the law, you fraud, he spat, yanking my arm harder. Your fantasy world has different rules. In the real world, I'm in charge. That's when he brought out the cuffs. The first one clicked shut on my wrist. As he reached for my other arm, my right hand, which had been resting on my lap, moved. My thumb found the small, almost invisible button stitched into the side seam of my belt. It was a discreet personal emergency beacon, standard issue for deep cover assignments. I held it down for a full 3 seconds. A tiny, imperceptible vibration against my skin confirmed the signal had been sent. It was a simple, silent cry for help, transmitted to a satellite and routed directly to the nearest federal response center, Fort Claiborne. The second cuff clicked shut. Alex hauled me to my feet. Let's go, he said, pushing me toward the door. You can try out your legal theories from a jail cell. As he paraded me through the living room, past the stunned faces of my family, I felt a strange sense of calm. The trap had been sprung. The bait had been taken. Alex thought his show was just beginning. He had no idea it was already over. Being marched through your grandmother's house in handcuffs is a unique kind of humiliation. Every eye followed me, but no one spoke. The silence was more damning than any accusation. It was a verdict. My family had reached their decision, and I was guilty. My mother, Eleanor, stood by the fireplace, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She wouldn't look at me. Her face was a portrait of a martyr, a mother burdened with a criminal son. Her disappointment was a tangible thing, a suffocating blanket in the already airless room. She had wanted a reason to justify her narrative of me as the wayward son, and Alex had gift-wrapped it for her. There was no flicker of doubt in her eyes, no maternal instinct to question if there might be another side to the story. Her golden child had spoken, and that was the end of it. It occurred to me with a sickening lurch that she might even be relieved. The ambiguity of my life was finally resolved into a simple, ugly picture she could understand. My Uncle Robert, who had always been in Alex's shadow, just shook his head slowly, a grimly satisfied look on his face. Knew he was no good, he muttered to my aunt, loud enough for me to hear. He looked at me with open contempt. My cousin Maya, who I used to build forts with in the backyard, stared at her plate, unable to meet my gaze. She knew this was wrong, I could feel it, but she was a captive of this family's twisted loyalty, too afraid to speak out against its self-appointed king. Her silence was born of fear, not conviction, but it served the same purpose. It left me utterly alone. The only person who looked me in the eye was my grandmother. She stood near the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her. As Alex pushed me past, her eyes met mine, and in them, I saw a universe of regret and a glimmer of something else. Hope. She had warned me. She had told me he was planning this. At that moment, I understood. She hadn't just warned me. She had wanted this to happen. She had wanted his poison to be drawn out into the open, no matter how ugly it was. She knew it was the only way to stop him. This wasn't just my fight. It was hers, too. In that long, silent walk from the dining room to the front door, I let go of the last shred of hope that this family could be saved. The bonds hadn't just been strained. They had been purposefully, methodically severed by ambition and jealousy. I wasn't losing a family. I was finally acknowledging that I never really had one to begin with. And in that cold, hard realization, there was a strange kind of freedom. There was nothing left to protect, nothing left to prove. All I had to do now was wait for the truth to arrive. Alex pushed me onto the front porch and into the humid night air. The two figures I'd seen earlier materialized from the shadows. They were sheriff's deputies, young and nervous, clearly in awe of their chief. "Get him in the car," Alex ordered, his voice full of swagger. He was savoring this. He pulled out his phone and made a call, pitching his voice loud enough for me to hear. "Yeah, it's me. He's in custody, just like we thought. A real piece of work. Prepare a holding cell, the special one. I want him processed personally by me. No calls. He's a flight risk. Federal impersonation. Major felonies." He was building his case, creating a narrative for his deputies, for the official record, for the town. He was the hero who had exposed a dangerous con man hiding in his own family. While he basked in his moment, my mind was a clock. The signal was sent from a military-grade device. It wasn't a 911 call that would go to a local dispatcher. It was a direct alert to a network that operated on a different level. Fort Claiborne was 47 miles away. The on-duty rapid response team would have been scrambled the second my signal was confirmed. Standard response time for a compromised agent alert in a domestic, non-hostile environment was between 12 and 15 minutes. I glanced at my watch. It was a simple, rugged field watch. It had been 4 minutes since I pressed the button. Alex ended his call and turned to me, his face illuminated by the porch light. "You know, I almost feel sorry for you," he said, his voice a low, condescending purr. "All that effort, all those years of lies. For what? To end up in a cell in the town you ran away from? It's pathetic." I didn't answer. I just looked past him, up the dark, quiet street. 5 minutes. The deputies opened the back door of the cruiser. One of them put a hand on my head to guide me in standard procedure. The vinyl of the back seat was cool against my skin. 6 minutes. Alex slammed the door shut and leaned in through the open window. You'll have a lot of time to think about where it all went wrong, he said. Maybe you'll finally learn that you can't build a life on lies. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. He stood there, lecturing me on honesty, while his entire identity was built on being the big fish in a tiny, stagnant pond. His power was an illusion, propped up by the fear and deference of people in a town too small to know any better. 8 minutes. My heart was steady. My breathing was even. In my line of work, you learn to wait. You learn to trust your training, your team, and your tech. The waiting is the hardest part, but it's also where you win or lose. Alex thought he had already won. He was wrong. He was standing at the scene of his own execution and had no idea the firing squad was already on its way. 10 minutes. He was about to get a very abrupt, very public lesson in jurisdiction. At the 12-minute mark, it began. It wasn't a loud siren. It was a sound that was far more intimidating. The low, synchronized hum of powerful engines moving at high speed. Then, 2 sets of headlights cut through the darkness at the end of the street. Not flashing, just piercing, steady beams. They weren't police cruisers. They were large, black, government-issue SUVs, the kind that have no chrome and seem to absorb the light around them. They didn't slow down as they approached. They sped up, converging on my grandmother's house from both ends of the street, perfectly executing a pincer movement. They screeched to a halt, blocking the road entirely, their headlights pinning Alex's cruiser in a brilliant, inescapable glare. Alex, who had been leaning against his car, straightened up, blinded and confused. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. "State police? I didn't call for backup." The doors of the SUVs flew open simultaneously. Men in black tactical gear, armed with short-barreled rifles, poured out. They moved with a fluid, terrifying efficiency. They weren't cops. They were federal agents. They established a perimeter around the house in seconds, their movements precise and silent. They moved like a single organism, a predator closing in on its prey. The 2 young deputies froze, their hands hovering uncertainly near their sidearms. They were hopelessly out of their league, and they knew it. Their small-town authority had just evaporated. From the lead SUV, a man in a crisp suit stepped out. He was calm, his face impassive. He walked directly toward Alex, his footsteps echoing in the sudden, tense silence. "Are you Chief Alex Caldwell?" the man asked, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. Alex puffed out his chest, trying to reclaim some semblance of authority. "I am. And who are you? This is my crime scene. Identify yourselves." The man in the suit didn't even blink. He held up his credentials. "Special Agent Rollins, Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is no longer your crime scene. This is now a matter of national security. Step away from the vehicle." "National security?" Alex scoffed, though a tremor of uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Don't be ridiculous. I have a federal impersonator in custody. This is a local matter that I have under control." Agent Rollins's eyes were like chips of ice. "You have made a grave error, Chief. A very grave error." He nodded to 2 of his agents. "Secure him." Before Alex could even react, 2 agents were on him. They didn't rough him up. Their movements were clean, clinical. One took his sidearm from its holster, while the other gently but firmly guided his hands behind his back. "What are you doing?" Alex sputtered, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You can't do this. I'm the chief of police. I have jurisdictional authority." "Your authority ends where federal law begins," Rollins said calmly, as if explaining the rules to a child. He then walked over to the cruiser and opened my door. He looked at me, then at the cuffs. He turned to one of the bewildered deputies. "Give me the key." The young man fumbled for the key, his hands shaking. Rollins took it, unlocked my handcuffs, and helped me out of the car. He looked me up and down, his professional gaze checking for any injuries. "Sir, are you harmed?" "I'm fine, Rollins," I said, rubbing my wrists. The name on his badge was familiar. We'd crossed paths on a joint task force a few years back. Alex stared, his jaw hanging open. The sight of this high-level federal agent treating me with deference, calling me sir, had short-circuited his brain. The foundation of his reality was starting to crumble. But the real earthquake was yet to come. Just as Agent Rollins stepped back, the rear door of the lead SUV opened. The man who stepped out was in his late 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a face that looked like it was carved from granite. He wore the classy uniform of a United States Army general, his chest a constellation of ribbons and medals that told the story of a lifetime of service. On his shoulders were the 2 silver stars of a major general. It was General Marcus Delaney, my commanding officer at OSDI, a man who reported directly to the Joint Chiefs. He strode past the tactical agents, his polished boots clicking on the asphalt. He didn't look at Alex. He didn't look at the deputies or the neighbors now peering from behind their curtains. His eyes were fixed on me. He stopped 2 feet in front of me, his posture ramrod straight. In the stunned silence of that Virginia night, he brought his hand up in a crisp, perfect salute. "General Caldwell," he said, his voice a low, powerful baritone that carried with absolute authority. "We received your signal. Are you secure?" The title hung in the air, a shockwave that flattened everything in its path. "General Caldwell, this is the moment that changed everything, when the truth finally broke free. Thank you for staying with me to this point. You are amazing. Please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below, just so I know you've made it this far with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It tells me that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey." The reaction was instantaneous. Agent Rollins and the other federal agents snapped to attention. The 2 young deputies looked like they were about to faint. And Alex, my brother, the all-powerful chief of police, his face collapsed. The arrogance, the triumph, the certainty. It all evaporated, replaced by a pale, sick confusion. His mind was scrambling to process the impossible. The brother he'd branded a pathetic fraud, a common criminal, was a general. Not a captain, not a major. A 2-star general in a highly classified intelligence command. In the rigid hierarchy that Alex worshipped, I outranked him by a measure he couldn't even calculate. General Delaney dropped his salute. "Rollins," he said, without taking his eyes off me. "Report." "The subject is secure, General," Rollins replied. "The local officer has been neutralized. He is identified as Alex Caldwell, brother of General Caldwell." Delaney finally turned his head, his gaze falling upon Alex with the weight of an avalanche. "Chief Caldwell," he said, the title dripping with contempt. "You are in violation of at least a dozen federal laws and articles of the UCMJ. Unlawful detainment of a superior officer, interference with a national security asset, conspiracy, and the willful mishandling of classified information. The list is extensive." He gestured to the agents holding Alex. "He is hereby relieved of his duties and placed under federal custody. He is not to leave the county pending a full investigation by the Inspector General and the Department of Justice. Get him out of my sight." The agents started to lead Alex away. He finally found his voice, a pathetic, desperate squeak. "But I didn't know. He's my brother. I thought he was lying. I was trying to protect my town." General Delaney took a step toward him, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Ignorance is not a defense, son. You let your petty jealousy and small-town ego endanger a man who has sacrificed more for this country than you could ever comprehend. You didn't just arrest your brother tonight. You committed career suicide. You disgraced your uniform, your family name, and your father's memory." They pushed him into the back of one of the SUVs. As the door slammed shut, his eyes met mine through the tinted glass. And for the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear in them. The king had been dethroned, and he was about to be exiled from his own kingdom. With Alex gone, a surreal calm settled over the scene. The tactical agents maintained their perimeter, a silent, imposing wall of federal power on this quiet suburban street. Inside the house, the family had gathered at the windows, their faces pale and pressed against the glass. General Delaney turned to me. "Let's go inside, Cameron. We need to secure any compromised materials and assess the damage. As we walked up the porch steps, the front door opened. My mother stood there, her face ashen. She stared at the general's uniform, at the stars on his shoulders, and then at me. Her mind was clearly struggling to reconcile the son she thought she knew with the man standing before her. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling. She knew him. Years ago, before his promotions, before my father died, Delaney had been a colleague of his. They had served together. "Eleanor," the general said, his tone professional but cold. "It's been a long time. I wish it were under better circumstances." "What is happening?" she pleaded, her eyes darting between us. "Alex, he made a mistake. He didn't understand. You have to tell them to let him go. This is all a misunderstanding." "Your son, Alex," Delaney corrected her, his voice sharp, "is a disgrace to the badge he wears. He illegally obtained classified intelligence, brought it into an unsecured civilian dwelling, and used it to unlawfully detain a flag officer of the United States Army. His mistake, as you call it, will be reviewed by a federal prosecutor. There is nothing to misunderstand." My mother flinched as if struck. She tried to appeal to a shared history, to a time when things were simpler. "But you knew Richard. You knew our family. He would want you to protect Alex." "I did know Richard," Delaney cut her off, "and he would be ashamed. Ashamed that one of his sons let envy rot him from the inside out and that the other had to endure it." His words were brutal, a surgical strike against the idealized family image she clung to. Agent Rollins and 2 other agents brushed past us and went into the dining room. I heard the sharp sound of them collecting the photos and documents Alex had spread across the table. They were evidence now in a case far more serious than Alex could have ever imagined. My mother looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, frantic confusion that quickly curdled into blame. "A general? You're a general? Why didn't you tell us? You let this happen. You let him do this to himself. You could have stopped this." The accusation hung in the air, breathtaking in its injustice. The blame, as always, was shifted to me. It wasn't Alex's fault for staging a malicious, illegal takedown. It was my fault for not managing his jealousy better, for not revealing a secret my very life, and the lives of those under my command depended on keeping. The logic was so twisted, so deeply ingrained in our family's dysfunction, that for a moment, I could only stare at her in disbelief. I took a deep breath, the cool night air feeling like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. I looked past my mother, at the family huddled in the living room, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. Then I looked directly at her. "Why didn't I tell you?" I repeated her question, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of 2 decades of silence. "Because you never asked." "Not really." She started to protest. "Of course I asked." But I held up a hand. "No. You asked why I wasn't home for Christmas. You asked why I couldn't just get a normal job. You asked why I couldn't be more like Alex. You never once looked at me and asked, 'Cameron, who are you? What drives you? Are you happy?' You never asked about me. You only ever complained about who I wasn't." I took a step closer, my voice dropping even lower. "My life is not a secret because I'm ashamed of it, Mom. It's a secret because it has to be. The work I do, it protects people, protects this country, protects this family, whether you appreciate it or not. To do it, I have to be a ghost." I accepted that, but I never thought my own family would try to put me in a grave. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of self-pity, not understanding. "We love you, Cameron," she started, the words sounding hollow and automatic. "No," I said, the word firm and final. "You love the idea of me, the version that fits into your life. The prodigal son you could one day welcome home. You've never seen the man who stands in front of you." Tonight proved that beyond any doubt. I looked over at my grandmother, who was now standing by herself near the door. I gave her a small, sad nod. She nodded back, a silent understanding passing between us. She was the only one. "General Delaney is right," I said, turning back to my mother. Dad would be ashamed, not of me, but of what this family has become. I turned and walked away, down the porch steps and toward the waiting SUV where General Delaney was already waiting. I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I would see the same confusion, the same inability to comprehend her own role in the destruction of her family. There was no victory in this, no satisfaction, just a profound, aching sadness for what could have been, and the cold, hard certainty of what now was. The door of the SUV closed, sealing me inside the quiet, air-conditioned interior. "You okay, Cameron?" Delaney asked, his voice softer now. "I will be," I said, watching the little blue house recede in the rearview mirror until it was just another light in the darkness. I had come home looking for an ending, and I had found it. The next 8 months were a blur of legal proceedings. Alex's case was fast-tracked through the federal system. His title as a local police chief meant nothing here. In fact, it made things worse. He was an officer of the law who had willfully broken it, and the federal prosecutor, a sharp woman named Alana Reed, was determined to make an example of him. Alex's defense team tried everything. They filed motions to have the case moved to a local court, arguing it was a family dispute that got out of hand. Denied. They argued that Alex was acting in good faith to expose what he believed was a criminal enterprise. Reed dismantled that argument by presenting years of Alex's unauthorized background checks on me, proving a long-standing pattern of harassment and obsession. I was not required to testify in open court. My testimony was given in a sealed deposition at a secure military facility, with General Delaney present. I simply stated the facts: the dinner invitation, the arrest, the evidence presented. I didn't editorialize. I didn't speak of sibling rivalry or family history. The facts were damning enough on their own. The key witness, ironically, was the private investigator Alex had hired, Markham. He had taken a plea deal, testimony in exchange for lesser charges on his own illegal activities. On the stand, he was a man burdened by regret. Prosecutor Reed's questioning was precise. "Mr. Markham, after you acquired the documents from my client's apartment, what was your professional assessment?" Markham adjusted his tie. "They were real, and they were serious. I've been a PI for 20 years. You see a lot of fake stuff, wannabes. This wasn't that. This was high-level, classified material. The kind of stuff that gets people put away for a long time." "And did you communicate this assessment to your client, Mr. Alex Caldwell?" Reed asked. "I did," Markham said, his voice firm. "I called him. I told him, this isn't what you think it is. This is real intelligence. You need to drop this, burn the files, and walk away, or you're going to bring a world of trouble down on yourself." And what was his response? Markham sighed. He laughed at me. He called me a coward. He said I didn't have the stomach for real police work. He said he was going to be a hero and that I'd be reading about him in the papers. The courtroom was silent. Alex, sitting at the defense table, stared at Markham with pure hatred. His local lawyer looked defeated. The trial lasted 3 days. Reed's closing argument was devastating. She portrayed Alex not as a misguided brother, but as an arrogant official who used the color of law as a weapon to settle a personal score, and in doing so, recklessly endangered national security. "This isn't about family," she concluded, pointing at Alex. "This is about a man who wrapped his personal jealousy in a flag and a badge. He didn't serve the law, he tried to make the law serve him. And for that, there must be a consequence." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. I was there for the sentencing, sitting in the back of the courtroom in civilian clothes. Alex was brought in wearing a standard-issue orange jumpsuit, the proud police chief reduced to a common inmate. He had lost weight. His face was pale and drawn. He looked broken. When the judge handed down the sentence, a gasp went through the courtroom. 12 years in a federal penitentiary, with a minimum of 5 before he was even eligible for parole. He was permanently barred from owning a firearm or holding any public office for the rest of his life. Mandatory psychiatric counseling was also part of the sentence. My mother wasn't there. She couldn't bear to see her golden boy in chains. The only family member present was my grandmother. She sat a few rows ahead of me, her back straight, her face impassive. As they led Alex away, she closed her eyes, and a single tear traced a path down her wrinkled cheek. It wasn't a tear for the man being taken to prison, I realized. It was a tear for the little boy he used to be, and for the family he had irrevocably shattered. 2 years passed. Life, as it does, went on. I buried myself in my work. The incident in Chesterville had necessitated a change in my operational status. My cover was blown, at least within certain circles of the government. This led to a promotion to a more administrative, strategic role at the Pentagon. I was no longer a ghost in the field. I was one of the people who directed them. It was a different kind of pressure, but a welcome one. Alex wrote me letters from prison. The first few were filled with rage and blame. Then they shifted to pleas for help, asking me to use my influence to get his sentence reduced. The last few were rambling, introspective, trying to make sense of how his life had derailed so spectacularly. I read the first one, scanned the second, and burned the rest unopened. There was nothing left to say. My only contact with Chesterville was through my grandmother. We spoke on the phone every few weeks. She never mentioned Alex or my mother. We talked about her garden, about the weather, about the books she was reading. In one call, she mentioned my mother was a wreck, talking about how she felt her life was a sham, even considering a divorce from the memory of our father, so deep was her disillusionment. But she never went through with it. Our calls were our unspoken agreement to build something new, something that wasn't defined by the wreckage of the past. I also started seeing Dr. Sharma, a therapist at the base. It was Delaney's suggestion. Even generals have baggage, Cameron, he'd said. Best to unpack it before it gets too heavy. In one of our sessions, Dr. Sharma asked me about the root of Alex's jealousy. It had to start somewhere, she said. Resentment like that is a seed that's watered for a long time. And then a memory surfaced. It was small, insignificant, but suddenly crystal clear. I was about 10 years old. Alex was 13. Our father had been helping me with a complex model airplane, a replica of a fighter jet. I had a knack for details, for patience, and I'd done a good job. When it was finished, my father held it up to the light and said, "You see, Cameron, you have a strategist's mind. You see the whole picture before you even start. That's a different kind of strength." Alex was standing in the doorway. He'd just come back from football practice, covered in mud and sweat, holding a small trophy. He had heard what Dad said. I saw the look on his face then, the flash of hurt, of being overlooked, even in his moment of triumph. Our father had praised his physical achievements, his touchdowns, his strength, but he had praised my mind. Alex was the hero, I told Dr. Sharma, the realization settling heavily in my chest. He was the strong one, the protector, but my father saw a different kind of strength in me, and Alex couldn't stand it. He spent the rest of his life trying to prove that my strength was a lie, a weakness, a fraud. He had to be the only one. It wasn't an excuse for what he did, but it was a reason, a sad, pathetic human reason. He hadn't just been jealous of my career. He'd been jealous of a single sentence spoken by our father in a dusty garage 30 years ago. He had built a prison of resentment for himself long before the federal government built a physical one for him. In that moment, sitting in Dr. Sharma's quiet office, I didn't feel anger toward my brother. For the first time, I just felt a profound pity. Today, I stood on an observation deck at the Pentagon, looking out over the Potomac towards the monuments of Washington, D.C. The world I inhabit now is one of global strategies, of quiet wars fought in shadows, of decisions that affect millions of people who will never know my name. It is a world of immense responsibility, and I am at peace with it. I no longer think about that night in Chesterville with anger or pain. It has become a scar, a reminder of a battle I didn't choose but had to fight. It was a battle for my own identity. For years, I allowed my family's perception of me to cast a shadow over my life. I let their small-town definitions of success and duty make me feel like an outsider. But that night, Alex, in his desperate attempt to destroy me, accidentally set me free. He forced a confrontation that I had been avoiding my whole life, and in doing so, He allowed me to see the truth. My worth is not determined by my family's approval. It is forged in my actions, my integrity, and my commitment to a purpose larger than myself. Sometimes, the people who share your blood will be the ones who try to define you by the parts of themselves they can't stand. They will project their own fears and failures onto you. And the hardest, but most necessary, thing you can ever do is refuse to accept their definition. You have to build your own life on your own terms. My name is General Cameron Caldwell, and I am finally home. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it has touched you in some way. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between your family and your own truth? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.